now listening to Radio Merdog.
What up? Welcome back to Radio Merdog, the best show out there, just unabashedly diving into cryptids and conspiracies out there. Today's creature feature involves something that has a real deep personal meaning to me, being one of, if not the first thing I can recall in my memory as actually terrifying me as a kid growing up. And this being is thought to roam around in the Pine Barrens of New Jersey, and has had a multitude of different descriptors over its long and sordid history, originating during pre-colonial times, as a matter of fact, before America was even founded. And tonight, we'll be taking a look at the Jersey Devil. But first, I want to let you all know that this episode is brought to you by Strong Coffee Company, the easiest way to start your morning with clean, sustained energy. Strong Coffee blends high-quality coffee with collagen protein, MCT oil, and essential nutrients all into one easy mix. No brewing, no machines, no mess. Just add water and you've got a powerful, smooth cup that keeps you focused and fueled. If you want to upgrade your morning routine, use code MERDOG at checkout for 20% off your order. That's MERDOG for 20% off Strong Coffee Company. Stronger mornings start here. So, for more than 2 centuries, close to 3, the Pine Barrens of New Jersey have been home to one of America's most enduring and truly unsettling legends, the Jersey Devil. This creature, described as a winged, hoofed entity generally, with a piercing cry, has been reported in newspapers, preserved in regional folklore, and embedded deeply into New Jersey's cultural identity. Tonight, we will take a look and examine the origins, the history, and the evolution of this New Jersey Devil legend, not through the lens of sensationalism, but we'll really take a look at the environment that brought the story about, because it's pretty interesting to look at the formation of our country, of America, and the ways that different things were looked at back then, and the cultural and political forces that sort of shaped it, in this legend in particular, and the sightings that still continue to this day that sustain it. So, to really understand and grasp the legend of the Jersey Devil, you really need to first understand what the Pine Barrens are. So, Pine Barrens are basically, it's a forest in New Jersey, but it's massive. They cover more than 1 million miles across southern New Jersey. And the Barrens form one of the largest expanses of unbroken forest on the East Coast. And this region is characterized by super dense pitch pines, a super thick undergrowth, extremely acidic soil, and isolated wetlands. And historically, the Barrens were just totally inhospitable for conventional agriculture. So settlement was sparse, and a sense of isolation has persisted there for centuries, hence the name of the Barrens, because there just weren't a lot of folks out there. And these early colonists, they really had a lot of suspicion for the area. The landscape was quiet in a weird way that would just pique their sense of imagination and freak them out. The way the forest is generally laid out with the pine trees, sounds were extremely muffled, and the wind would carry a strange echo throughout the trees, and still does to this day. And unexplained lights were often reported around bog iron furnaces, whose flames would glow unusually red. And for a lot of people out there back then, hundreds of years ago, the Pine Barrens seemed like a wilderness that just almost existed apart from civilization. It was like this weird bubble out there that people did not want to deal with. And it's a place where the natural world felt untamed and unpredictable and just straight up hostile. And that's something we really don't experience a lot nowadays. And you can only imagine how much worse it was back then. If these dudes in the 1700s thought that these Pine Barrens were something gnarly to deal with, given that their day-to-day life back then, in general, sucked. And this, such an environment, so dark and sparsely populated, it of course became the perfect setting for stories of strange creatures and supernatural entities. So the most enduring origin story of the Jersey Devil, this is the main progenitor of all of this, It centers on this lady known through the folklore as Mother Leeds. And according to tradition, in 1735, there was this woman living in the Pine Barrens. Usually they go by Deborah Leeds. That's the main identifiable name that we've been able to find. She found herself pregnant with her 13th child. And so she already had 12 kids. She was exhausted, of course. She was impoverished and burdened by having such a large family. And she is said to have cried out in despair that the child would be, quote unquote, a devil. And she said, "Let it be the devil." And the legend describes a stormy night in which the baby was born, appearing normal at first, but then quickly transformed into a large creature with hooves, wings, and a long tail. It allegedly struck those nearby, flew up the chimney, and disappeared into the forest. And I think it's pretty interesting that the Leeds family did, in fact, exist. And they lived in the region at the time this legend was said to occur. And their presence lends names and context to the story, but there's no record of such an unusual birth or any kind of supernatural events associated with it. And this legend, from what I can tell, has just kind of been passed on as an almost oral tradition. And it seems like it's a mix of folklore, the details just kind of accumulated gradually over time. So you kind of have a mix of these like puritanical anxieties from, well, it was all the Puritans that came here to what would eventually be America. Then you have this old school, super old school, rural superstition, and just this weird, mysterious nature that comes with life in the Pine Barrens. So, yeah, the true roots of the Jersey Devil, I don't think lie as much in a monstrous birth of this demonic creature, and more so in the political and religious tension of colonial New England, specifically New Jersey. So the Leeds family, which verifiably did exist, they had one main figurehead that's known throughout history, and this guy's name was Daniel Leeds, and he was a very prominent figure in the early colonial times. So Daniel Leeds was a publisher of almanacs, the farmers' almanacs, and these included astrological charts and esoteric symbols, and these kinds of more out there ideas were extremely condemned by the local Quaker community, who viewed them as wholly inappropriate and heretical. Like, they claimed he was an extremely ungodly man for doing these things, publishing these books with these charts. So, over time, Daniel Leeds became estranged from the Quakers, and his public reputation shifted from being a respected colonist to a very controversial figure in his community. And this tension just only amplified when the Leeds family found themselves in competition with Benjamin Franklin himself, the Benjamin Franklin, because he wrote the Poor Richard's Almanac, and that was in direct competition with the Leeds families. So Franklin, he was a bit of a troll, he was engaging in a lot of satire, and he had his own strong satirical style at the time. He made a lot of jokes implying that a member of the Leeds family had died and returned as a ghost or a demon, and these remarks, kind of combined with the already strained perception of the Leeds family, really just helped solidify the association between the name Leeds and the notions of like devils and infernal forces and evil and anti-godly stuff. So this was long before the creature was ever called the Jersey Devil. It was mainly known as the Leeds Devil, and it was a product really not of supernatural events, I'd say, but it's of this weird political tension that was happening at the time, as well as the religious conflict between the Leeds family and the Quaker community, and cultural rumor. So over time, as the oral tradition and folklore evolved, the creature, it really just transitioned from what was just a symbol of colonial disputes to this monster said to inhabit the Pine Barrens, which is what we have today. So even though the creature's origins might be rooted in some pretty intense social conflict, There have been many reports of unusual creatures in the Pine Barrens for several hundred years now. So there's some early accounts from the 18th and 19th centuries that describe a mysterious entity leaving strange hoofprints, especially on roofs, flying over rural roads, or emitting these screeching cries unlike those of any known animal at the time. And these sightings were sporadic over the centuries, but they were consistent, and they did help strengthen this overall belief of the existence of some sort of strange winged creature in the region, in the Pine Barrens. So there was kind of a pinnacle to all of this, and this most dramatic period of reported activity happened in January of 1909 during what eventually became known as the Week of Terror. And over the course of several days, newspapers across New Jersey and Pennsylvania published numerous reports of encounters with this creature. And in fact, the fear and tension was so high that schools closed in the area due to fear, and factories halted their operations, and there were groups of armed citizens patrolling countless rural areas throughout the Barrens in search of this creature. And the people claimed to see it perched on rooftops, flying across the Delaware River, and leaving hoofprints in snow that appeared to travel across fences and onto houses. So they just thought there was this flying horse-like creature out there, which is insane. So it's kind of uncertain whether these sightings were genuine misidentifications or the result of mass hysteria, which is a possibility that all of these people, this idea entered into their cultural zeitgeist and then everybody experienced the same delusions at the same time. That's a possibility. Or they could have been deliberate hoaxes. It's hard to say for certain, especially given this was well over 100 years ago that this happened. But what is clear is that they had a pretty damn profound impact on the public consciousness and really cemented the Jersey Devil as a strong figure in American folklore. And across all of these reports and folkloric accounts, the descriptions of the Jersey Devil, they've been pretty consistent for the last several hundred years, and witnesses generally describe a creature with the head of a horse or goat, with elongated features, a very thin and emaciated torso, bat-like kind of stringy wings, cloven hoofs like that of a deer, and a long, slender tail, sometimes with a sharp tip. And the creature is said to move quickly, both on the ground and through the air, and is generally associated with a pretty unnerving high-pitched scream. And these features all combine elements of familiar animals in unfamiliar ways, which it creates a figure. It's like a chimera. It creates a figure that is both recognizable and alien in a weird way that kind of tickles our brain in a nice way. And the consistency of these descriptions across generations has really contributed to the creature's just everlasting presence in our cultural imagination. But before we look into some theories on the Jersey Devil, I've got a question for you. Are you looking for a clean, lasting energy without the crash? Aspire energy drinks are made with natural caffeine from green tea, zero sugar, and refreshing flavors that actually taste good. So whether you're heading to the gym, powering through work, or just need a boost to get you through the day, Aspire gives you smooth energy that keeps you laser focused. And you can try Aspire today and save money while you're at it. You just have to use code MERDOG at checkout for 20% off your order. That's MERDOG for 20% off Aspire energy drinks. And that's at aspiredrinks.com. So fuel your day the smart way with Aspire. So there's quite a few theories that attempt to explain the Jersey Devil legend in more rational terms. And one possibility is that the sightings were just misinterpretations of animals that we all, for the most part, know about already. The big one is, of course, sandhill cranes. This is something I dove deeper into the Mothman episode, and in my opinion, I don't think it's a rational candidate for Mothman. It might be more so for the Jersey Devil. I don't know, because New Jersey does fall within the standard migratory patterns of sandhill cranes, and their height, their wingspan, and vocalizations, they can be pretty darn startling if you're unfamiliar with them and don't expect it, and you're already in a pretty unsettling location when you're out there in the Barrens. So I could see that. Other theories kind of look at it being an escaped zoo animal or exotic pet. So, I mean, that even includes kangaroos. And there were a couple of kangaroos that were kept in the Pine Barrens at one point and did escape. And kangaroos already look pretty freaky, but when you see one out in a place where you wouldn't usually expect one to be, that is horrifying. And they do have the ability to jump, so I guess they could be seen in the air, but not for very long. So I don't know about that aspect of it. And they obviously don't have wings or hooves or anything like that, but there might be some kangaroos out there in the Pine Barrens. I wouldn't rule that out. And another explanation is just rooted in psychology and sociology. And really, the Pine Barrens, with their insane isolation and overall unfamiliarity, they're just the perfect fertile ground for the development of different myths and for the misinterpretation of the things you would encounter naturally out there. So that, coupled with sensationalism in newspapers in the late 19th and early 20th centuries, I can pretty easily see how small local stories could quickly snowball into something that would lead to widespread public panic and just get totally out of hand. So despite these explanations, there are a lot of residents in the region that do believe the Pine Barrens hold something unusual, whether it's an unknown animal, a cryptid, just old folklore that kind of still remains in people's minds. I mean, the story of the Jersey, it's still extremely well known in the area, and it's a big part of a lot of people's lives. So here we are today. The Jersey Devil is still a massive cultural symbol. I mean, it's in a lot of literature. There's been numerous documentaries on it, films, television shows. I mean, it was in the first season of the X-Files. I mean, that's pretty sick. And in a lot of shows that explore cryptozoology, at some point touch on the Jersey Devil. And in fact, it was the Lost Tapes episode. So Lost Tapes was this show on Animal Planet about 20 years ago, and they featured the Jersey Devil in season 1. And that episode just shook me to the core when I was a young lad. And it was really that show, Lost Tapes, that introduced me to cryptids as a whole and set me on the trajectory to be hosting Radio Merdog right now, about 2 decades later. So I am very grateful to that show. But I remember so many sleepless nights just being terrified of the Jersey Devil and Bigfoot as well. Those two in particular just freaked me out. The idea of looking outside the window at night and seeing one of those just peering in. And even though I grew up on the opposite side of the country from where the Jersey Devil might live, I still thought he might fly on across the country or something. I couldn't really tell you. But in terms of the Jersey Devil being in the cultural zeitgeist, there is the New Jersey Devils hockey team, and they of course have the creature as their mascot, so that's kind of helped keep that in people's minds. And there are a lot of books and roadside attractions and local festivals in New Jersey that help propagate the story still to this day. And sightings do still occur in the modern times, but definitely far less frequently than in the past. And people do oftentimes report unusual sounds in the forest and unexplained shapes in the night sky and just little fleeting glimpses of something unidentifiable in the woods, but it's just that. It's something unidentifiable. There hasn't been a lot of solid concrete sightings in a long time. So whether these accounts really represent legit, genuine encounters, or it's just the continued influence of the regional folklore, it's just open to interpretation, I think. So the Jersey Devil is pretty cool. I think it's more than a creature story. It's a cool combination. It's a reflection of history, of geography, and the cultural landscape of New Jersey. And it came from a lot of different sources. The main thing, of course, being a mixture of colonial conflict combined with the religious tensions of the times and just the isolation of being in the Pine Barrens and on a greater scope of being at the start of a new country in a new place in the world, unexplored. That must have been a pretty terrifying place to be at the time, and I would imagine people's minds would go to the worst places possible. So it doesn't surprise me that the story of a woman giving birth to a devil would come from a place like this. And the Pine Barrens have remained largely unchanged. I mean, they're still vast, quiet, and mysterious. and I would love to visit there someday. That's on my list to make it up there sometime and really get to check it out in person. And I would imagine when I get there, I'll be like, oh, I can totally see how people would think there's a devil roaming about from all the videos I've watched over the years of what it's like. And of course, the Pine Barrens episode from The Sopranos, which is such a funny episode. So whether you look at it as a symbol or a historical artifact or a genuine cryptid, its endurance over the hundreds of years it's been around, it is pretty cool how it demonstrates the power of folklore to shape the identity of a community across many generations. So, thank you for tuning in to this look at the Jersey Devil. If you enjoyed this episode, please leave a review and give it a rating on whatever platform you're listening to it on. It really helps a ton, and share it with a friend if you think you know somebody who might like this. So, stay strange, stay safe, and remember that in a world full of monsters and darkness, be the light and bring that light with you, and the Merdog will be right there by your side. Peace.